Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead. I'm your host, Ken Jacobs of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching. And hopefully, this isn't your first time here. So, you already know that Taking the Lead is my opportunity to share leadership wisdom from respected leaders, leaders I respect. Yes, mostly they're in PR, marketing, advertising, but we don't talk that much about that. We talk about leadership. So about to introduce someone. We've known each other a long time, supporters and friends. We're not sure if we've met in real life, but I think in this crazy virtual world, we were just talking about the fact that we have a whole slew of supporters and influencers and friends who like, I feel like I know you, but have we met? And it doesn't matter. We can meet here on Taking the Lead. So this is Ron Culp. He's the professional in residence for the PR and advertising program at DePaul University. He's also, and many of you know him as the principal of Culp and Company. He's a board member of the Museum of PR, Howdy Shelley, an advisory council member of the Diversity Action Alliance, and a founding board member of the Communications Leaders of Chicago, a great group. Previously, he had senior executive roles at Ketchum, Sard Verbinnen, Sears, Sara Lee, and more. But we don't have time to keep giving you more of his bio. We're going to welcome Ron Culp to Taking the Lead.
Thank you, Ken. It's always good to share a conversation with you. And someday make sure that we remember if we met each other.
That's right. Or
But
or will
I think
we?
you're right. I think we just feel like we've known each other for years.
Yeah, exactly. So let's dig right in. As you know, you could tell from the bio, Ron has led communications at corporations, agencies, now focusing in the last few years on higher ed. And I'm curious, how is leading at each location, if you will, um, the same, and how is it different?
Well, I went into academia after many years in corporate and agency jobs, and I thought it was going to be so different. And the only thing that's really different about it is you don't have the support group. I mean,
Mhm.
when something goes wrong with the printer, you're fixing it. You're doing far more hands-on because you're operating more as an individual rather than surrounding yourself with a lot of other talent. But the thing that's surprising to me at first is the similarity of the fact that we're all dealing with many of the same stakeholders, if you will. For instance, maybe we call them clients or customers on the corporate or agency side. I call them students. Now that drives some faculty up a wall. They're not customers, they're students. Well, no, they're customers. You're going to make sure that you're giving them what they're paying for and exceeding their expectations, just as agencies and corporations must do with their clients. But then you've got communities. Very much we're involved in the community. Any university is, and you're also finding that you have administration to deal with. Now it's a little different. You're working with the dean maybe, and not the president of the university as much, but you still have bosses. It doesn't seem as literal as they are in agencies and especially corporations, but the similarities are absolutely there. And the key thread to the whole thing is that I've noticed early on is the one quality that all people must have when they go into any of these functions, and it's just the same in academia, is you have to have the best listening skills possible. You've got to be an effective, active listener, and that's especially important in a classroom.
So it's funny, my mind, when you talked about that shift, my mind went to my shift from working at Ogilvy PR many years ago to working with someone who was a guest, Marina Marr, very entrepreneurial in her outlook and everything else. And man, I learned all about photocopiers and inks and print rollers and things like that. Because when things broke, it was just assumed you'd figure out how to fix them. So it was very hands-on and very practical. Um, what, if anything, are you teaching your students? Not about PR and comms, that could be another podcast, but what do you teach them about leading today?
Well, the key thing, I teach a leadership class every spring term, and it is as much fun for me as I hope it is for them, because I bring in leaders from maybe a CEO, chief communications officers, agency heads. Every week I feature a different leader. I'm basically teaching a class that I wish I had when I was in college. And I'm trying to instill with students what I wish I knew when I started my career in corporate America. So this is really been exciting. And what happens is it's a way for me and for the students to stay current on what the demands are from these hiring managers, if you will. And as a result, what we find is they're basically telling us the same kind of things. If you want to be successful in this organization, here are the kind of things we expect from you. And we expect you to really work hard, to work smart, to be a strategic thinker, not just an order taker. I want you participating in conversations and all these other qualities that many people, especially in the entry level jobs, feel that maybe we should just be a note taker and sit back. And these bosses today are expecting anyone they hire to come with a skill set that I certainly did not have when I graduated from college and went into my first corporate job.
Yeah, very, very, very different world. Um, as mentioned, you're an advisory council member of the Diversity Action Alliance. We've had their board members and council members here on the podcast. How do you do that job in an era when DE&I goals are being minimized or even actively opposed, either by organizations and especially by governments?
Yeah, it really is problematic for a lot of people. It's such a lightning rod in many institutions. I'm fortunate enough at DePaul not to be facing that, at least not yet. For the past 6 years, I've taught a class on DEI. And one way maybe I've gotten around it is I've taken the book that Shelley Lazarus and Barry did on diverse voices, profiles, and leadership. That's the name of my class. And I make a point of saying, we're going to look into all aspects of diversity, from ageism to xenophobia, and not take positions on them, but just know what both sides are saying about them. And then through the book, each student will read each of those profiles, and then they're going to write and communicate with some of those leaders, and they create a relationship. If that book is so loaded with ideas for students that I hadn't thought of that. And this person's faced everything I'm facing. And all of a sudden, we create relationships where it's a mentoring relationship, maybe very short term. And maybe then they're going to write a discussion board post or a paper about their experience with meeting this leader who they identified with personally, that is going through or went through some of the same things they did. So the course is not a lightning rod, if you will, in my opinion. It just helps students understand that when they get into the real world, that these are the ways that you have to really be actively engaged with the broader community in order to make for a successful enterprise. Because chances are you're not selling to either white people or black people or Chinese people, old, young. You've got to understand the marketplace you're dealing in. And I just think it's far more effective for us to position it that way, that it makes good business sense. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about quotas or anything else. I'm talking about let's be smart, understand the importance of, if you will, DEI.
It's interesting to me that you ended there because we've discussed DE&I with a lot of our guests in the last 2 years. And I think every one of them has made the point that it's a business imperative. This isn't
Right.
about forcing people what to do. It is a business imperative. If you want to be successful, you've got to understand and be surrounded by and listening to and hiring people of all backgrounds, because that's for the most part what your purchasers, your consumers, your influencers, your stockholders, your shareholders are all very, very different people. So
And
I wish the Diversity Action Alliance a lot of success in its efforts, in a tough environment. So now we're going to switch a little bit to PR, just a bit. Here we are in early 2026. There are a lot of mid to senior level executives who never thought they'd have to do another job search unless someone was going to come and take them. They really thought their job search days were over, and they are middle to senior in age and experience, looking for work in a tough environment. What is your best counsel to them?
well, first of all, I try not to be mean spirited when they contact me and I haven't heard from them in years.
Yeah.
It really ticks me off. And a couple of cases, I consider them good enough friends that I could be honest, say, where in the hell have you been?
Mhm.
Um, and if you're like this with everyone else in your network, you better get working on rebuilding the network. Last year, I stopped counting the number of people who were looking for work who had been laid off, and more towards the end of the year, as you well know,
Right.
that I haven't really updated my LinkedIn profile in years. And one of them had 38 connections. I'm like, where have you been? You can't possibly. None of my students
Yeah.
only have 38. First year
Yeah.
students don't have 38. You really have to go to work. So it's back to the old adage that, you know, don't wait for the shoe to drop. You have to network, network, network. And you do it throughout your, too many people are, well, I'm so busy with my work.
Oh,
Then you have to ask yourself questions like you just framed here. What happens when the rug is pulled out from under you? And if you don't have a support group or a network that you can turn to, it really makes that search lonely and far more difficult.
the one thing I'd add, people have come to me and said, I haven't been as active. I haven't been in touch. I haven't kept, and I've been focusing on the job, and I'm embarrassed to reach out. And I tell them, reach out anyway, because you need help. People have contacts and connections. They may hear of an opening, they may connect you, swallow your pride, apologize for having been out of touch, and say it will never happen again. I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope you can help me. And in my experience, 99.9% the people in our world, and that's PR and comms and leadership. Yeah, yeah, great people, wonderful people. I mean, you're a reformed PR guy. I'm a reformed PR guy. We have it, I think, in our DNA to help people. And if you need help and you reach out, I really think 99.9% of the time people will help because it is what makes the world go round. So don't let that fear or the embarrassment prevent you from reaching out because that person who you weren't in touch with for months or years, and shame on you, but they may know someone who's got an opening or have just a really good network. And everybody knows this is going on now. So I think people are being more generous. So I think people should reach out. Now let's talk about the graduating classes of 25 and 24, because in the old days, they would be your entry level jobs, not at corporations necessarily, but at agencies. And AI has taken away that level. So for someone from the class of 24 or 25, or even, heading towards 26, what do you recommend they do to be looking in such a tough environment?
Well, I'm finding that the top students are not having trouble finding jobs.
Really?
It is still, I think it's easier for entry level positions to be filled today than at the mid and senior positions, that there are more of those because some of the senior people who are being let go, they're being replaced by junior people who have the AI skills.
Mm,
And so we're really putting so much emphasis on all educational institutions on making sure that students are equipped with AI skills and other technical skills that they can take to the marketplace because the boomers and now mostly the Xers who are running those places don't have those skills.
yeah.
You know, they're going off and taking expensive certification courses, trying to get, crash knowledge on it. But the day to day and the comfort that students have with this technology, they're looking at. So if that's not on your LinkedIn profile, and I talk LinkedIn more than I talk about resumes because you're going to get your job
Oh,
through LinkedIn
oh
and
gosh, yeah.
your network, not a resume,
Oh yeah.
not responding blindly to a job. And you touched on that in the earlier points that you were making. That network, you know, you said apologize. I haven't been in touch, but I really have always valued, your input. And I haven't really wanted to bother you, but I'm bothering you
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because if you use LinkedIn properly, you're going to find who does that person know, who knows somebody, who's going to turn this into a job opportunity for me. It invariably happens. That's where all the hiring is taking place. Now, junior people are still getting it by applying, but I talked to an agency recruiter the other day. They got 900 applications for an entry level position. And I said, okay, how do you sort through it? And one of the first things that popped up, well, we see how active they were in college. We
Mhm.
see if they have any technical skills, AI specifically, and were they a member of PRSSA? And did they
Really
have a leadership
interesting.
position? Because that tells me
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they're not just passing through looking for a job. They got involved in college in something they have a passion about. Whether they were editor of their student newspaper, a reporter for their student newspaper. So I'm really encouraging students today, work on your network and find an extracurricular activity that excites you, throw yourself into it. It could be a nonprofit organization in the community. This is going to jump off the page, and these recruiters tell me that is far more important than if you brag that you have a 3.8 out of a 4 point. No
Mm.
one's even looking at that. They're looking at what did you do and what are you going to bring to this organization?
So, DePaul is clearly teaching the undergraduates about AI. I've got all my Syracuse Newhouse swag. Tony D'Angelo and his group doing a great job. in really preparing the students with AI. But I will tell you, I speak to a lot of students from other colleges and universities where the focus has not been as much on AI, and I tell them if you can't master it, then you've got to take some LinkedIn courses that end up in some kind of certification. Because the key is, yes, AI might be the thing that limits the number of jobs, but if you can prove you master it, there's some irony in that you can then maybe be one of the few who gets considered. So you're a founding board member and chair of the Planck Center for Leadership in PR. Anyone who's watched the podcast knows I was such a big fan of Betsy Planck. What were her most inspiring leadership truths that inspire you to this day?
Well, I reflect back to when we started the Planck Center and she called a small group of us together in Chicago at her favorite spot, the Union League Club. And we thought it was an honor that we were there. She made sure we knew that she felt it was an honor that the five people around her were absolutely so valuable to her and her network, and that we became trusted advisors, and then we all became board members because you can't say no. You couldn't say no to Betsy.
Right, I can
And
imagine.
it was at that meeting it was a great meeting, and we were talking through the whole idea and how generous she was going to be to get this started. And at the end of it, she pulled me aside and she said, "Have you ever thought about being a teacher?" And I laughed. I said, "I have no qualifications. I have no skills, and I require a lot more money."
Yeah.
And she's no, I want you to don't forget the fact that you should do it at some point in your career. And my biggest regret in life, she didn't live long enough to see
Mm.
me do it, because every time she saw me, when are you going to give up that corporate job? When are you going to give that agency job and do God's work?
Yeah. Well, you're clearly doing it,
Yeah,
right?
and boy, was she right. But Betsy knew how to build teams. And with the Planck Center, I remember Bill Heyman, who you're quite familiar
Sure.
with,
Yeah.
a great headhunter, dear friend. Bill was on the board, that initial board. And year after year, when we kind of reminisced at the end of the annual board meeting, he would always say, "I have belonged to many organizations, and never have I belonged to an organization that had the esprit de corps, the commitment, and the fact that, gee whiz, we just like each other.
Mhm.
And as a result, we got a lot done. Hardly any staff, and everyone picked up because none of us wanted to disappoint the magic of Betsy Planck. And that continues with that board today. It is truly a phenomenal group. The people who never knew her could not have been influenced as I was by having her both as a mentor and friend. But they act like they have because the organization over the years has instilled that in the way it recognizes honorees at its milestone and mentoring events every fall. And we just make sure that people remember Betsy, and that she had a true passion for students, young people developing their careers. She loved the fact that I do a blog, a career blog for young people. And I wish I knew more about blogging, but the fact you're doing it is phenomenal. Can you show me again how to turn on the computer? Uh, she
Yeah.
she she was the old world, but she really understood what the future needed in this talent that we're developing today.
I don't have time to share the whole story in depth, but Betsy paid me a kindness in 1994, and I've never, maybe even 93, and I've just never forgotten it. And so of all the things that anyone who is in any way in her orbit, learned so many things from her. But I learned that the kindness you pay to people becomes your legacy. And I'm an example, people remember decades later, decades. So any opportunity that I have to pay a kindness to pay it forward, it's partly because of my relationship with Patrice Tanaka, and
Oh,
partly because of Betsy. Last question, fun question. What's something surprising about Ron Culp we might not know from your LinkedIn profile?
oh my. Well, I'm a coffee snob,
Okay, but
and
how do you define that? I mean, there's
well,
all levels
it,
of.
there. I knew I could never. I'm not really. I love the taste of wine, but I really don't drink much of it. But I am definitely a snob when it comes to coffee, and it came through visits, both business and personal, to Europe, especially Italy and France. And I just love the coffee. And so after one of the trips to Italy, I came back and my wife and I said, what a great trip. And I said, we're working in Albany, New York. I was working in the legislature. She was working for the newspaper there. And I said, when the right location opens up, I want to open a coffee store. And that was actually a long, long time ago. That coffee store is still there.
But
I don't know.
you opened it?
I wish I still owned it. It's been highly successful. Uh,
Wow.
and we sold it to our best customer. And this year, it'll be celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Fantastic.
If you go back to look at 50 years ago, Starbucks had not yet expanded outside of Seattle. And
Wow.
we took it on. It was the first coffee store in upstate New York. And it from the day we opened it, we had lines of people. They still do. And the daily grind is the name, as you can see. I know I'm not supposed to promote, but
I think we
anyone
can
passing
allow
through
that
Albany,
this one
stop
time.
stop and tell them that you know the founder. And I don't think you're going to get a discount, but maybe. And and now I'm working
Oh,
with them, hopefully from local students, to create a fun 50th anniversary celebration.
that's great.
Um, great little find. So I'm not I guess I'd be a sommelier of coffee, if you will, because I search for it wherever I go. I turn up my nose when I ask what kind they're serving, and
That's
and
funny.
and then I often come home and make my own as a result. But it really is. Oh, and then when I'm traveling, I post on Instagram when I find good coffee, and I post a picture. I plug the place that's serving good coffee,
Mhm.
and I'm saying generally it's under the headline "Still in search of the best coffee in the world." And then
That's
I
hysterical.
give them a rating between 0 and 10. I normally don't go. I give no one a 0, even if they try. But it's really fun. I'm eventually going to find it. I've come close a couple of times to that 10 mark, but it's a fun little factoid. And my family thinks I'm crazy
Oh,
because
I completely get it. I
uh,
completely get it. I don't grind my own every day, but I would say every other or every third day I'm grinding my own. I should grind every day at
you
this
better
point,
do it
but I
every be as close to making it as possible.
yeah, that's true. This has been so much fun. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Pretty easy. LinkedIn, if you're students or whatever, and don't just link in. Tell me I saw you in your conversation with Ken Jacobs or whatever, something that makes you stand out in my mind so that I can quickly link in back with you, and I will. Or you can reach me through the Paul address, which is rculp2, RCULP 2 at DePaul.edu.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been so much joy talking leadership, talking Betsy Plank, talking all these things. Thank you so much, Ron. And if any of you out there, if you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only, as far as I know, the only not the only Ken Jacobs, but I'm the only Ken Jacobs with some initials after my name. Or you could just find me KEN at JACOBSCOMM.com. Thank you again, Ron Culp. And as we always say, until next time, keep on taking the lead.